You don't need a mansion or a Hollywood name to leave behind a story that's more than just fame.
Me to need a will, just a family, or a cat plotting world domination. Welcome to Celebrity Estate Chaos, where we prove a lot of things. Like how estate chaos isn't just for millionaires with private islands, anyone with stuff, relatives, or that one weird collection you think nobody's fighting over. And chances are, they will.
Okay, let's get into this. Caregiving. It's rarely something you sign up for, is it?
No, not usually. It often just sort of
Yeah.
happens, chooses you, maybe a phone call comes in, something shifts suddenly.
And bam, you're juggling your regular life chaos, bills, job, maybe family, your own health stuff.
Right, and then suddenly you've got this other thing. Feels like a second job, full-time, only unpaid.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of our sources put it, trying to walk a tightrope while carrying flaming luggage and maybe a toddler.
That's a pretty vivid picture, yeah. Because your normal life, it doesn't just pause, it keeps going right alongside this huge new demand.
So that really sets the scene for this depth dive. We've gone through quite a few sources, articles, and specifically drawn from material like the Caregivers Handbook and Tina Jin's Too Late to Panic.
Mm-hmm. And our goal here, really, is to pull out the key insights from all this, the stuff that you really need to know.
We're focusing on just how big this challenge is, how all that life chaos crashes into caregiving.
And crucially, what these sources say you have to do to prepare, to get through a crisis, and protect everyone, especially yourself, the caregiver.
So let's dive right into that reality. Caregiving when life is already throwing punches.
Okay. And it's important, I think, to define life's chaos here. It's not just a vague idea.
Yeah.
It's the real stuff. The job change you didn't see coming, relationship problems, your own health acting up, even big world events that add stress.
That's just the baseline, right? Then you layer caregiving onto that, and the sources really hammer home how many different hats you suddenly wear.
Oh, absolutely. You're the nurse keeping track of meds. You're the housekeeper trying to keep things safe and clean.
You're the therapist offering that emotional support, the cook, the driver for appointments.
The advocate fighting through confusing systems, personal assistant, finance manager, emergency planner. It goes on and on.
Yeah, the list is huge. And what really stands out in the material is how unseen a lot of this work is.
Totally invisible sometimes, mostly unpaid, often not really noticed by others, and definitely underappreciated.
But at its heart, it's driven by love, right? That's the core of it.
It is. It comes from that deep connection. But here's the painful bit the sources keep pointing out. Caregivers pour everything into that person, and they often forget themselves. Or they feel really guilty about taking any time or care for themselves. They're giving love, but they desperately need support too, and often it just isn't there.
And that's the danger zone, where chaos can tip over into, catastrophe. What happens when a normal emergency hits? A fire, power outage, flood.
Or even something personal, like you have a health scare, a sudden hospital visit while you're already stretched so thin with caregiving.
That's the question.
And the sources are pretty direct about it. Chaos turns into a catastrophe when you don't have a plan B, or even a plan A sometimes.
They give some really scary, real examples, like, okay, power's out. Your loved one needs medical equipment that runs on electricity, no backup, what do you do?
Right. Or you're rushing, panicked, trying to get a prescription, and you yourself get into a car accident.
Oof, yeah. Or wildfire evacuation order comes through, and you suddenly realize, how do I even get mom out? She can hardly walk.
And where are her backup meds? Did you even think about backup meds?
Yeah.
These aren't just random emergencies. They're emergencies complicated by caregiving.
And this whole vulnerability thing, it gets worse because of what the sources call a really common dangerous myth.
Which
The assumption adult kids often make that their aging parents have everything sorted out. The will, the finances, all the legal docs neatly filed.
Oh, yeah, that one. The reality is usually messier.
Much messier. The sources have quotes like, Dad said he had a will somewhere. Or Mom told me, don't worry, dear, I have a folder just in case.
And then you look after the fall or the stroke, and no folder.
Yeah.
Or you can't find it.
Exactly. And that lack of accessible info, that creates a huge legal problem.
Huge. If your parent suddenly can't make decisions, becomes incapacitated, and there's no power of attorney set up.
What is power of attorney, just quickly?
It's a legal document. It
Yeah.
lets someone you choose make decisions for you, financial, medical if you can't, Crucial piece of paper.
Okay, so without that.
Without that, the caregiver, even if it's the obvious person like the spouse or child, might be legally powerless. Can't access bank accounts to pay their bills, can't make medical choices. You're paralyzed.
Wow. And the sources connect this to something they term the parent vulnerability trap.
Explain that.
It's like parents might try to shield their kids or maybe just hate having those awkward talks, so they downplay problems, their fears, their challenges.
But aging itself brings risks, doesn't it? Falls are more serious. Forgetting pills isn't trivial. Loneliness can make them targets for scams.
Right. So the caregiver often has to become the protector proactively, starting those tough conversations about getting things in order before the crisis hits. When it hits, it can be devastating if you're not ready.
Okay, so that's the problem. What's the solution? What do the sources say about building that preparedness plan? How do you actually do it?
Well, they lay out some essential building blocks, things you really need before everything goes sideways.
Like what?
Top of the list, absolutely non-negotiable, a medical binder or, a secure digital file system.
And that's more than just a list of meds.
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's the single source of truth. Medications, dosages, allergies, all the doctor contacts, their care preferences like DNR orders, diagnoses, and copies of those vital legal papers. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, all in one place.
Got it. And link to that will somewhere problem.
Asset and financial info. The sources are really blunt. You have to find out where the bank accounts are. Does a will exist? If so, where is the original insurance policies?
Don't just assume mom and dad have it handled.
Exactly. Don't assume. The data suggests they often don't or it's disorganized. Trying to piece it together during an emergency is a nightmare.
Makes sense. What else?
The practical boots on the ground stuff, an emergency evacuation plan.
Like for a fire or flood?
Yeah. Think it through beforehand. What do you absolutely need to grab? How do you physically move someone with mobility issues quickly? Where are those backup meds stored so you can grab them?
And crucially, who's your backup? What if you're sick or stuck somewhere else? Who can step in?
Right. Which leads to the need for backup systems generally. Power backups for that essential medical gear, an up-to-date, easily accessible list of emergency contacts, and having copies digital and hard copies of all the key documents, stored safely, maybe even off-site or with a trusted friend. Not all eggs in one basket.
Smart. Redundancy.
And one more big one. A communication plan.
Within the family or support network.
Yeah. The sources suggest figuring out roles ahead of time. Who's the point person for updating other relatives so you're not making 10 calls? Who can realistically help with specific things? Groceries. Sitting for an hour.
Because trying to manage the communication and delegate tasks while you're in crisis mode is just too much.
Exactly. It's a recipe for burnout. So building these systems, it's creating that safety net. But the sources also talk a lot about managing the sheer weight of this role day to day without, breaking.
Which is a constant risk, isn't it? Caregiver burnout is real.
Definitely. So the focus shifts a bit to proactive things for the caregiver themselves. One idea I liked was creating a care map.
What's that?
Slowly writing it all down. Who does what, when, where, all of the caregiving tasks. The sources say just making that invisible mental load visible can bring a surprising amount of clarity. Turns chaos into something you can maybe manage.
Okay, I can see that. Making it concrete.
And using tech. Apps for medication reminders, shared digital calendars so maybe family can see the appointment schedule and offer help, expense tracking tools.
Yeah, finding ways to be efficient. Because your time and energy are so limited.
Absolutely. And this next one comes up again and again in the material. Join support groups.
Why is that so important?
Well, multiple reasons. Finding people who just get it. That shared understanding combats the intense isolation many caregivers feel.
And you probably get practical tips, too.
Exactly. Real-world advice, hacks, maybe resource recommendations you wouldn't find otherwise. Online or local, just connecting is key.
Okay. What about the caregiver's own health? That often goes out the window.
He does, and the sources are really strong on this. You have to schedule your own health time. Make your doctor's appointments, keep them. Try to build in exercise or even just 15 minutes to sit quietly and breathe.
It sounds simple, but it's probably the hardest thing to do.
It is, but the message is clear. A burned out, sick caregiver can't help anyone effectively. You risk your own collapse.
Which ties into the last big piece of advice on managing.
Asking for help.
Right, which sounds obvious, but the sources acknowledge how incredibly hard it is for many caregivers.
Yeah, there's guilt or feeling like a failure if you can't do it all yourself.
But asking is crucial, whether it's hiring someone to clean, getting meals delivered, arranging respite care through family or agencies.
It's not weakness. The sources frame it as human, as necessary self-awareness. It's strength, really.
All these strategies, they become even more vital when you hit what the sources call that moment that changed everything.
Yeah. The turning point.
Often it's sudden, isn't it? A fall, a stroke diagnosis,
Yeah.
that middle-of-the-night call from the hospital.
And instantly, your identity shifts. You're not just the daughter or son or spouse anymore. You're the crisis manager, the primary caregiver, overnight.
And that's often when the realization hits hard. Love is essential, it's why you're doing this, but
But love is not enough.
exactly. Love doesn't automatically tell you how to navigate Medicare or fill out complex forms or manage finances under pressure.
No, it doesn't handle the logistics, the legal stuff, the paperwork blizzard that descends.
And the sources are honest about the emotional fallout of that transformation. The deep isolation, the guilt that never seems to go away.
Sometimes anger too, right? At siblings maybe who aren't helping as much. Resentment over losing your old life.
Yes. And just ongoing grief. Grief for the person's decline, grief for your own life changes. It's heavy.
It is. But the sources don't just leave you there. They offer ways to, well, survive it and even live through it with some resilience.
What are those core survival strategies?
Seems to boil down to a few key things. One is letting go of perfection. Embracing good enough care, because perfect is impossible and striving for it will break you.
Okay. Good enough is good enough.
Second, building that plan we talked about, getting the paperwork, the systems, the backups in place before you're desperate, being proactive.
Taking control where you can.
Right. And third, finding your people, connecting with those support groups, friends, family who understand or are willing to learn, not going it alone.
So wrapping this up, caregiving is this incredibly complex balancing act. Life's chaos, your sense of duty, this deep love.
But it doesn't have to be pure guesswork and constant reaction, right? That's the message from the sources.
No. Preparation makes a huge difference. It's not just about surviving the next crisis.
It's about being ready so you can actually live through the whole experience with more resilience, finding those moments of connection, not just feeling constantly on edge.
And resources like Too Late to Panic, like the Caregiver's Handbook, they exist to offer that guidance, that roadmap, to make the unknown feel a bit more manageable.
So the final thought we want to leave you with, something that really comes through from these sources aimed right at you listening.
What would actually happen if for some reason you had to hand over caregiving tomorrow, suddenly? Would anyone else know what to do?
Would you even know where everything is clearly laid out?
It's about making the invisible visible through planning, through preparation, and remembering always what the sources emphasize.
You matter too. Your well-being is part of this equation.
That's a wrap for today's chaos. If you learned something, laughed a little, or now feel slightly more prepared for life's curveballs, we've done our job. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. Catch us on Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere podcasts make you rethink your to-do list. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, if it's important and unexpected, we probably cover it. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.